Hello, and welcome to the 29th Living Faith Annual Awards event, sponsored by the Spirituality Network of Central Ohio. On behalf of the staff, volunteers, board of directors, I'm pleased to welcome you to this virtual event. In 2020, it's very different than the event we had planned to host at the Jewish Community Center on May the 29th. We're just pleased that you are able to join us on YouTube or on the Spirituality Network website. I also want to give a shout out and thanks to Dr. Mark Lomax for that marvelous drum call that he provided for us to open our event. So thank you for attending, and please enjoy the presentation of the awards and each of the words, on all of the words rather, that each of the awardees have to say in their behalf. Again, thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the event. Hello again. I'm pleased to introduce to you Therese Taylor Stinson. Therese is a retired federal program analyst who remains on the roster of the Federal Interagency Shared Neutrals Program as a lead equal employment opportunity mediator. She is also an ordained deacon and ruling elder in the Presbyterian Church. She served as the moderator in 2016 of the National Capital Presbytery. Therese is also a graduate of the Shalem Institute and has been a spiritual director for over 15 years. She is also a member of the Shalem Society for Contemplative Leadership and was commissioned associate faculty for Shalem's Personal Spiritual Deepening Program in 2010. When I first met Therese, I met her through her work as the founder and incorporator and managing director of the Spiritual Directors of Color Network, and as a member of Spiritual Directors International, where she serves on the editorial board of review for Presence. Therese founded the Racial Awareness Festival in Washington, D.C. in 2015 with strong support from the National Capital Presbytery. She co-edited and contributed to the groundbreaking anthology, Embodied Spirits, Stories of Spiritual Directors of Color, and solo edited and contributed to the award-winning anthology, Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around, Stories of Contemplation and Justice. Therese is a certified emotional emancipation circle facilitator for the Community Healing Network and the Association of Black Psychologists. Her most recent contribution has been to the book Kaleidoscope, Broadening the Palette in the Art of Spiritual Direction. I am happy to introduce to some and present to others my friend and colleague, Therese Taylor Stinson.
Greetings. My name is Therese Taylor Stinson. I'm the founding managing member of the Spiritual Directors of Color Network. I am very grateful to be asked to speak to you this evening about how I founded the SDC network, as we call it, and to be able to give you congratulations to the awardees for their accomplishments that will be acknowledged this evening. The founding of the SDC network began with my matriculation in the spiritual guidance program of the Shalem Institute. And after 18 months of reading and study and 2 residencies, there was not one book related to contemplative practice or spiritual direction that came from a person of color. Now, I know that some persons of color were mentioned in some of the seminars we had because they came from the early centuries before or during the church. And so I know a lot of those North Africans and Mid-African people were people of color. However, none of the readings that we had none of the articles that we read, none of the references basically that we were given in our seminars had anything to do with people of color. So as we came to the end of the program and it was time to submit a final paper, which could be either on a theme of the program or it could be on one of the mystics that we studied, or we could decide to write a research paper, I decided to do an exploratory of Black spirituality and the art of spiritual direction. After writing the paper and submitting it as my final paper for Shalane, my mentor didn't think that it had much to do with contemplation and tried to get me to rewrite my paper. But I insisted that it was a good paper, and I asked him to run it by the director of that particular program at the time. I believe he did, and he came back and he wrote me a very beautiful letter about a pianist playing a song that they had written and how no one would interpret the song the way it was interpreted in his head as he wrote it, but they would appreciate what he had written. So my final paper was received for the end of the program. Meanwhile, I had 3 people who were with me, one my spiritual director at the time, one a close friend, and another person whom I trusted to read my paper as I was deciding to publish it in Spiritual Directors International's premier journal, Presence. They read the paper and told me that I should publish it. And so I did send it to Presence, and it was received for publication. And if you're interested in reading that article, which was entitled Black Spirituality and the Art of Spiritual Direction, you can find it in the December 2009 issue of Presence, which I think may be on CD now rather than in a printed form. So that article published, it was received in my spiritual guidance program, and I came out and took several other long-term programs through Shalane. Meanwhile, the SDI, Spiritual Directors International, was having their annual event in the DC area that year in Dulles, Virginia. And so the only other person of color in the program that I went through and me had started a conversation on where are the people of color? Why don't we see more of us in these programs? It was just the 2 of us to talk to one another. And it was a conversation that we began and it continued throughout our relationship with one another. We went to the SDI program and we saw some other people of color there, not many, but a few. And we decided to have dinner the night before the main program with these people that we met, all women, and it was a great conversation. And then we were invited that Sunday they would have a networking meal, and we could invite people to come to a networking table that we created about whatever topic we wanted to join people together around. So we decided to invite the people of color that we saw to our networking table that Sunday, the ending day of that particular SDI conference, to our Sunday meal, networking meal, and to talk about what it was like to be a spiritual director of color. To a person, first of all, we were surprised that not just African Americans were at the table, but Africans from South Africa and Cameroon, a guy from South Korea, and another woman from Puerto Rico. In addition to about 5 or 6 African American women. And we all had the same concern. Where are the people like us? Why don't we hear about contemplation from our cultural perspectives? And we decided that maybe we could write a book together. And so we started taking the names down and the addresses and the telephone numbers. And at the end of the conference, we dispersed and everyone went their separate ways, except for me. I went home and I kept talking about it. I contacted the person that was in the program with me that we started the conversation with, and told her my ideas about wanting to follow up with these people and have some conference calls and see if we might start a network. Well, we did that, and slowly a network did form. My friend, one of the ones who read my paper, told people that she knew who were spiritual directors or interested in spiritual direction about my network, and they joined. People that I knew, people in my peer group, other people of color that I knew that were associated with Shalem and SDI joined the network. Until finally, I think our largest number was 125 spiritual directors of color and a few allies across the globe. So what started as thinking we were going to start something for just African Americans, people of color here in the United States, became a global movement. So eventually, I think we went about 6 years, actually. We published our first book, which I was one of the editors, called Embodied Spirits, which told our stories of coming into contemplation and being spiritual directors. We published that book in March of 2014. That same year, we incorporated our network, and so now it is the Spiritual Directors of Color Network, LTD. And we continue to invite people when we were at Spiritual Directors International conferences, or my friends, or people that I heard of that I might have an email address for, to join our network. So as I mentioned, we were about 125, and we now, before even incorporating, published a book. And one of the people who ended up on our first board of directors, which started out as 7, asked me how was it possible, well, he expressed, how was it possible that we were writing a book and publishing a book before we even incorporated a network? But we did, and it went well. And so now we had an incorporated network, a board of directors of 7, and we continued to think about how we could live into a vision and mission that some who gathered with us helped us to do a discerning circle to see what should be in that vision and mission. And we're still using that same vision and mission today and struggling to live into it. We are also getting ready to start now our second. We had our first board, which eventually went down to only 4 of us, but now we're starting our second board of new members, except for me as the founding member, and I will be an ex officio this time, in their possibility for 2 terms on the board, and we hope to live more into our vision and mission. Meanwhile, with the first board, we actually published 2 more books. One book that I edited solely, called Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around, Stories of Spiritual Directors of Color. Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around, Stories of Contemplation and Justice. And that book actually won an award, an Indie Author Legacy Award for social awareness, because it was at the time that we were hearing of all of the deaths by police of Philando Castile, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, and Eric Garner, and so forth. And so we wrote stories about our feelings and about what we knew from our past during the civil rights movement, as well as we were not a monolithic group, not just all African Americans. So one Korean writer talks about the movement the peace movement that goes on Jeju Mountain in South Korea. And we have a Muslim member who wrote about discrimination against women, particularly women of color, but from an Islamic perspective. So there were all kinds of writings in that second book. We had one woman who told her story in the characters of three different people, so that she could share her story without it being too intimately connected to her personally. So there were many stories in that book, and it was an award-winning book. And then finally, as we came to the end, near the end of our first 2 terms of board members and got ready for our second term, one of our board members, Anita Adesanya, led the editing for the third book, Kaleidoscope, which is what we were trying to work toward it from the very beginning. And that is actually a book that contains a curriculum with practices and explanations for being a spiritual director for people of color. So we continue our initiatives. We want to start in emotional emancipation circles that first start with our own board of directors and then maybe leads out into spiritual directors of color in our network, and then just spiritual directors of color, whether they're in the network or not, who would like to gain some understanding of their own emotional freedom as they sit with other people of color. We want people to be more aware that for African Americans in particular and indigenous people, there has been a lot of trauma in our existence here in the United States, and none of it was by consent. And so we are trying to make people more aware of our cultures and how that plays into our spirituality, and that it's just as worthy of practice or a way of reaching the holy as that Europeans have put out as a good way of practice. We hope you'll read some of our books. We hope that when you sit with other people of color in spiritual direction, that you will consider some of our writings and consider that and be sensitive to the needs of a person of color sitting across from you. So that's the story, and I hope you will find the books interesting. And if you know people of color, or if you are a person of color and you're interested in our network, please come and join us. We would love to have you. And we have also now a website, https://sdcnetwork.org. Where you can become a member if you like and join our member search and have even your bio and picture put up on our site for people to find spiritual directors of color. I hope you found that story interesting. I again wish all of the awardees congratulations for their accomplishments, and I ask you for pray for us in the Spiritual Directors of Color Network as we push forward through our vision and mission. Thank you.
Becky Hoffman is receiving the Living Faith Award today. Becky and her husband moved from Mansfield, Ohio to Canal Winchester, Ohio in 2019, where they are members of David's United Church of Christ. Becky's life of service, whether working with parents whose children suffer from cystic fibrosis, families of PFLAG, seniors preparing their taxes, or Alzheimer's group, she is motivated by unconditional love. I am honored to give her this award on behalf of the Spirituality Network.
I feel very humbled and honored to be receiving the Living Faith Award from the Spirituality Network. My life has presented me with many challenges, And I feel so thankful that I was raised in a wonderful Christian home where unconditional love surrounded me. My father was a pastor serving Christian churches for all of his life. And he taught me unconditional love, the importance of serving others, and the importance of social justice. And my first challenge was when I gave birth to twin daughters who both had cystic fibrosis. Renee only lived 10 days and died from the disease. I had never heard of cystic fibrosis. I soon learned that many people knew nothing about it. My second daughter, Robin, is still alive today, and she's 54. I was told when she was born that most children died by the age of 12. My challenge was to adhere to the doctor's orders, and we spent hours every day doing treatments and caring for Robin. I started a support group for parents that had children with cystic fibrosis, and we educated people about the disease, and we also raised money for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. It gave me hope to be helping. My adopted son, Ryan, who also needed my help and love, and I became his caregiver. He was gay, and he struggled with alcoholism, and in 1996, at the age of 28, he died from the AIDS virus. I did not let the loss of my son ruin my spirit, and I became very involved with an AIDS support group in Mansfield and helped other families that were trying to cope with loss and rejection. This experience heightened my awareness of the importance of social justice. My husband and I started a PFLAG group in Mansfield to help other families. 25 years ago, it was a different time than it is now regarding the gay issue. And I felt called to help these families accept their children and to understand that being gay was not a choice. Now, I was always very active in my church in Mansfield, and I served as an elder many times and visited our shut-ins monthly and took communion to them. The women's group was important to me, and I helped by encouraging them to study, to learn, and to grow in spirituality. The love and support that I both gave and received enriched my life. I completed the training to become a Stevens minister and worked with several young girls. This was very challenging to me. I wanted to share my spirituality and love with these girls who were living in hard situations. I always liked working with numbers, and when I retired, I volunteered and for 15 years worked with the AARP Tax Aid Program, preparing income taxes for people, and this gave me much joy, and I helped many people by doing their taxes for free. When my mother developed Alzheimer's disease, several of our friends at our church also were dealing with parents that either had dementia or Alzheimer's. And so we hosted a group called Care for the Caregivers at our home each month for 4 years. It gave me hope as we each shared our concerns and ideas and prayed together. My latest challenge is caring for my dear husband of 57 years, who has suffered from Parkinson's disease for the last 12 years. He's currently in stage 5 of Parkinson's, and he needs help with everything. I thank God that I am able to care for him with the help of several very loving people and my daughter and my son-in-law. We moved to Canal Winchester about 1.5 years ago, and we've joined David's United Church of Christ in Canal, where we have found a loving and accepting congregation. Through all the challenges in my life, I have found God guiding me to love unconditionally, and I have felt the joy that comes from sharing God's love and serving God as Jesus taught us to do. So thank you very much for this very meaningful Living Faith Award.
It's my honor and privilege to introduce to you Adam Troy, who is a recipient of a Living Faith Award. In the words of his nominator, he says, "While astute strategically, politically, and operationally, Adam's fundamental drive is always to use his talents in service to the greater good. Even when speaking truth to power, his mind and heart are always in the right place. That is focused on God's love for all people and God's hope that his people will strive for the best earthly lives possible. This often means addressing a variety of inequities, which Adam does in the most caring and collaborative way." Adam is currently the Director of Missions, both domestic and foreign, at New Salem Baptist Church, where his father was the longtime pastor, and his brother Keith currently serves in that role. In addition, Adam is the Executive Director of the church's Community of Caring Development Foundation. The Community of Caring Development Foundation is deeply involved with the City of Columbus in the implementation of its One Linden Plan. As both part of that program, the COCDF addresses affordable housing, food inequity, job readiness training, support for the Linden area schools, along with other areas that greatly enhance the community. In doing so, Adam represents this foundation with the city, along with the interactions with the Linden Area Commission, the Linden Business Association, the Columbus Rotary, and many other organizations committed to Linden's progress.
It's been said that service is the rent we should all be fortunate enough to pay while living the lives we've been blessed with here on earth. And so for the past 2 decades, it's been both my goal and my honor to try to live that out as much as possible by being a servant leader, certainly standing on the shoulders of so many that have gone before me. They have laid solid foundations. And so it's given me the opportunity to continue to learn and to build in connection with some really talented folks, certainly all across the landscape here in Columbus, and more specifically over the last 2 years in our Linden community. And so on behalf of so many people I get an opportunity to work with on a daily basis, shoulder by shoulder, often who are working in the shadows where there are no cameras and there are no limelights. On behalf of obviously my New Salem Baptist Church family, and certainly last but not least, the leadership of our Community Development Foundation, we say thank you for this award and for giving us an opportunity to be recognized, as we like to say, for living our lives by putting feet on prayers and doing it in a way that we honor faith. Thank you so much.
It's my honor to introduce to you Linda Bryant. Linda was born and raised in Huntington, West Virginia, where most of her family still resides. She was raised as a Methodist but converted to Catholicism at the age of 35 and was active in St. Pius Parish School, where her children attended. She graduated from both Marshall University in business and the Ohio State University in sociology. She worked for 25 years at Franklin County Children's Services and Franklin County Juvenile Court in a variety of positions over the years. She says volunteering with the Women to Women Listening Ministry for 15 years has been the joy of her life, serving in leadership, helping to develop and maintain new sites. Most importantly, she also volunteered directly in the listening sites such as the YWCA Family Shelter, the Downtown YWCA, the CMH Housing at East 5th Avenue, and the Martin DePorres Center. In 2013, she completed the Spiritual Guidance Program with the Shalem Institute for Spiritual Formation and currently is a Spiritual Director, Spiritual Companion. In addition, she has also served on the Board of Directors of the Spirituality Network. She says being a mother and now grandmother of 5 beautiful children has been the best role of her life so far. The joy they bring is beyond measure. It's my honor to welcome Linda Bryant.
Well, first let me say what an honor it is to be here receiving this Living Faith Award. I am humbled to be here today and very grateful to those who saw in me a faith that lives. As I look at what a living faith has meant to me and how it has shown up in my life, I have to return to my roots in the hills of West Virginia where I was born. It was a landscape of hills and hollows, creeks, one-room schools, and small churches scattered everywhere. My loving family was not given to attend church, nor was there any expressed faith. But I was drawn as a young girl to a church near our home, and it was in this church that my faith was given expression. I loved the scriptures, and I was especially impacted by the spoken prayers of hope and promise. I needed those prayers at the time. It was also a caring church that reached out beyond its walls to the needs of that surrounding community. And when I moved away and left that place, I knew that my life's work would involve being with the poor and the underserved. For 25 years, I worked at Children's Services in Juvenile Court here in Columbus. I felt I had answered my question, what is mine to do? But I had much to learn about urban poverty, abuse, neglect. Some children I worked with lived at home, but many were in foster homes, residential treatment centers, and some were locked up. In all of my work, my sense of the presence of the holy was in listening to their stories, whether it be a small child disclosing abuse or an older youth trying to make sense of how things went so wrong. My life will forever be changed by hearing these stories. From a spiritual standpoint, I felt a call to go deeper. I was encouraged to apply to the Shalem Institute of Spiritual Formation in Washington, D.C., and I did complete the spiritual guidance program. Shalem invited me to honor who I already was and the mystery of my own life in the holy. I learned to pray in ways I had not known before, especially the prayer of quiet. Now I have the blessing of blessings to walk with others who are ready to take that journey inside. Lastly, let me say for the past 15 years, I've had the honor of being part of the Women to Women Listening Program ministry. Some women came from places of privilege, some women come from places of deep disadvantage. As women, we sit and we listen to the common ground that binds us together without judgment. We hold each other's pain and joys, as only women can do for each other. It has been my joy to watch as women, myself included, sometimes for the first time step up and own their own story. And in doing that, we begin to rejoice in who we are as women. We are women who are made to be in relationship. I want to give special thanks to Noreen Malone and Maxine Shunk, who have shepherded us all these many years. And last, I want to say how grateful I am to my own family, my husband of nearly 50 years, my children and their spouses, and to my beautiful grandchildren, 5 of them, who are my heart and soul. Thank you so much for listening, and I want to close with a quote from Richard Rohr that kind of says it all for me. Life is not a matter of creating a special name for ourselves, but of uncovering the name we have always had.
Marjorie Cruz Tulersky is receiving the Living Faith Award this morning. The author Gregory Boyles writes in his book, Tattoos on the Heart, "If we love what God loves, then in compassion, margins get erased." That is what Marge does. She erases and dismantles margins and barriers. Marjorie was raised in the South, where racial barriers were never hidden or denied as they were in the North. She was sent to the best schools, but they were not inclusive. Her family moved to Columbus in time for her college education. It was the era of the Vietnam War, women's rights, and the increasing struggle for racial equality. After graduation, she taught school for 1 year, then left, choosing to raise her children and work in early childhood education. But a shift began to erase the barriers and margins in Marge. She studied scripture and paid attention to a dream, which she interpreted to mean that God wanted her to start a daycare at Christ the King Parish on the far east side of Columbus. The Christ the King Children's Center became a reality when an old rectory was repurposed, and its mission became all children are welcomed. From there, Marge started a daycare program for infants in the St. Stephen's Community House in the Linden area that allowed mothers to either work or continue their education while their babies were safe in the arms of caring people. After 30 years, she helped to establish the Bishop Griffin Center in the very building that was once the Christ the King Children's Center. This time, the center provided food, clothing, and household items for people in need. In addition, Marge created a 40-bed vegetable garden to provide fresh vegetables. She was instrumental in recruiting and organizing the many volunteers that were needed to run both programs. She is a member of the St. Vincent de Paul Society, whose mission is to care for those in need. She is a board member for the Griffin Center, now called the Bishop Griffin Resource Center. Her deep call to love as Jesus loves provides direction in her life. Marjorie is attending to the least of these and cares for the creation with her multi-focused effort. Step by step, year after year, she has erased and dismantled margins and barriers.
Prophets, often called mentors. My first was a scout leader, 1960 in the Deep South. She braved taking our troop to a black church to meet their troop. We discussed the limits put on women in choosing a career at that time. But one of the black girls gave us a taste of reality. There was no college for her to go to. So most of them expected to end up as cooks or to clean white ladies' houses. I was slammed in the face with a reality that part of my community had no choices, and it stuck with me. My second mentor, Father Mike Donovan, 1980. Family income in the area had slumped, and women needed to go back to work. 5 moms from my parish pushed through the idea of opening the first parish-owned child care center in the diocese. We gave 75 women the choice to help their families. But there were 210 we had given choices to 8 years later. We helped 23 other parishes do the same. Now it's 1990. The diocese sent me to Washington, D.C. to find out about Title 20. And in 1992, the diocese opened a 150 child care program at St. Stephen's Community House in Linden. My third mentor, Judy Statt-Miller. She hired me as director and introduced me to deep poverty and its effect on families. We were able to provide free or reduced care that let moms go to work, college, skill school, or finish high school. Yes, I had a room full of 16-year-old mothers, but I can cite outstanding victories that most of my mothers and their families experienced. And then it was 2006. A group of Far East Catholic churches got together and talked about how the recession that had just started was affecting all of our communities. And we became the Bishop Griffin Resource Center and still function, providing food, clothes, and connections with social services. Our goal? To provide choices to all of our neighbors. Choices. It's another word for divine free will. Thank you.
Sister Nancy Miller is to receive the Living Faith Award. Sister Nancy came to Our Lady Perpetual Help Parish in 2010. Over time, she began to make her influence felt in a variety of ways. After prayerful deliberations, she founded a Care of Creation team in 2016, whose purpose was to organize, research, document, educate, and inspire the community for stewardship and care of the Earth's resources. Informative bulletin articles began to appear, as well as a green shelf with helpful books and articles. Trees were given to those interested, as well as reusable grocery bags. The blessing of the animals included a collection of pet food for the local food pantry. A tree was planted at the parish school. Members toured SWACO and the Bird Center at Ohio State. An education program was held for Boy Scouts and Campfire Girls. After 3 years, through the combined efforts of about 100 volunteers, ages 7 to 85, and the participation of vendors, the care team at the annual parish festival was able to compost over 1,000 gallons of waste and recycle 1.6 gallons of material. The festival was attended by about 5,000 people and was a great opportunity for education in the whole community. In addition to the work done for the Care Creation, Sister Nancy's own neighborhood has benefited from her personal attention. Children in her neighborhood were waiting for the school bus in a dangerous location without sidewalks on a busy road. The sister was successful in seeking out a bus shelter from St. Anne's in Westerville. They agreed not only to donate and move the shelter, but to pay for its installation. Children now gather in a safe, dry location. Neighborhood children in her apartment complex all know Sister Nancy and often come to her door. She enlisted help from men in the parish to paint games on the concrete parking lot and provide balls to be used there. Each fall, each child is given a personally chosen book bag fitted with materials for Pacific grade levels. These items are given at a picnic with food and games. Sister Nancy is also active in the human trafficking ministry. She collects supplies for that effort and frequently speaks at their events. For the past 20 years, she has served at Bishop Reedy High School, first as a guidance counselor and currently as a tutor. It is evident that Sister Nancy is truly living the charisma of St. Francis as she continues to show love and care for all of God's creation.
Thank you. It is in giving that we receive. As a Franciscan, I've always found joy in giving service to others. I do it for the others, but also because it gives so much joy back to me. Some days I can almost hear God saying thank you, and that is enough reward for me. It makes me do it again. Still, I'm very grateful to those who nominated me and to the Spirituality Network for bringing out the good that is being done all around us and the goodness of God that we reflect in the good we do. This event shines on the light of God's goodness. It shines light on God's goodness in a world that sometimes seems obsessed by darkness. Living our faith is always a collaborative effort. For me, it is the energy and dedication of our Creation Care Council members, combined with the support of the pastor who called us into being, that has enabled us to move forward on several fronts in the care for our common home. And it is the quality leadership and membership of the Central Ohio Reach and Restore Coalition that energizes me every time we come together and get a glimpse of all that the other organizations and individuals are doing to confront human trafficking and to restore the dignity of those who have been abused. It's also the spirit of gratitude, growth, and generosity of the victims themselves that inspires me to do what I can to fight human trafficking. And it's the joy and simplicity of the children in my neighborhood who come for somebody to read a book to them or to listen to them read that gives me the energy to continue to do that in my neighborhood. And always, it is the love and support of family and friends and my Franciscan community that blesses and supports me all along the way in everything I do. They all share in this award. Finally, what I want to share with you today is a lesson I learned from my father, who affirmed everyone he saw as pure good, and by so doing called forth the very goodness of God in them. That is what I believe is happening here today, seeing the good and affirming it. And I pray we will all continue to look for and affirm God's goodness wherever we see it or can call it forth. Thank you for acknowledging the good that is done in our world today and for recognizing the small part that I play in that. Again, thank you.
David Brown is listed as the creative and artistic director of the Harmony Project, a community service choir comprised of 500 diverse members of all ages, with a goal of uniting the divisions that separate, serving those who have no voice, and sharing each individual's unique talent to create a better community in which we live. David Brown is a visible representation of what it means to live one's faith. He grew up in New Orleans, Southern Baptist, and gay. He first came to Columbus as part of a singing group from Louisiana Tech and found that he was accepted here for what he was. Unfortunately, going home put him back into hiding. Several years later, David found himself in New York City, where he directed choirs in churches that left him wanting to connect to the lyrics he could not understand and moved to action by their message. In September of 2001, he was on the verge of beginning a new choir whose concept was simple: use music to bring together people who believed differently, voted differently, and lived differently to inspire audiences throughout the city. Still, his soul was searching for more. He was struggling to come to terms with what it meant to live life out loud when 16 years later, David, now back home in New Orleans, found himself in a shelter with others as Hurricane Katrina raged outside. It was here that he made the decision to go where he could use his gifts and talents to organize people, or at least inspire them to organize themselves. Columbus, Ohio, the place that he first felt loved and accepted, inspired him to focus on building a community he wanted to live and settle in. Thus, the Harmony Project was born. The Harmony Project has developed over 300 service initiatives, served 62 local nonprofit agencies, and logged over 60,000 volunteer service hours in support of its mission, creating more balance, more openness, more acceptance, and fostering the idea that we all belong. Singing is the vehicle that brings them together. but creating peace gardens, respecting the differently abled, transforming neighborhoods by planting trees, supporting those incarcerated, and feeding and cooking for families in the shelters are just a few of the ways that they have learned to see the world beyond the one they know. David grew up oppressed, but he never gave up hope. He exemplifies tending to the least of these, and to whom much is given, much is expected. David Brown is indeed living his faith.
Good morning. I want to thank you so much for including me in this day, and I want to thank Diane LeMay, who is one of the most spiritual people that I know. And when Diane LeMay calls me and tells me that she wants me to do something, I'm of course always going to say yes. I will be honest, when I got the call and it said that you guys wanted to give me a Living Faith Award, I felt a little uncomfortable with that because I'm not someone who really kind of thinks of myself in terms of religious community. But I decided to sit down and kind of wrestle with maybe why I thought that. And I wrote something that I wanted to say today, and that way it'll keep me to under my 3-minute time limit. Faith is not measured by our accolades or rewards. Faith is measured by our bruises and our scars. Faith is not measured by how often we kneel to pray. Faith is measured by how often we get up and go. Faith is not measured by security. Faith is measured by risk. Faith is not measured by the moments we've met. Faith is measured by the moments we've yet to meet. Faith is not measured by belief in a higher power. Faith is measured by our belief in one another. Faith is not measured by its humility. Faith is measured by its audacity. Faith dies when it sits still. Thank you for including me on this day, but more importantly, thank you for acting on your faith, which makes it a living faith. Thank you.
It's my honor to present the Hope for Today Award to David Hett. David is an exemplary contemplative teacher. He was nominated for his career and his work as the Minister of Religious Life and Learning. David's articles and sermons always reflect the importance of approaching Christianity through a contemplative lens. For over 25 years, he has and continues to lead small groups, introducing members of the congregation to the value of contemplation through a weekly contemplative way group based on the format of James Finley, author of The Contemplative Heart, and quarterly Sunday services that are designated contemplative services. David regularly shares webcasts from the Center for Action and Contemplation. He has been serving for over 25 years at as steered through the Spiritual Search program that has subsequently become the Burkhart Center. It is his passion that has allowed well-known contemplative teachers from all across spiritual traditions to be experienced by the larger population of Ohio and beyond. It's my honor to present the Living Faith Award for Hope for Today to David Hett.
Thank you, Renee. And first of all, I want to thank the Spirituality Network for this honor. I was completely surprised and humbled to know that there are some people who see me as one who is about the promotion of contemplative and spiritual practice from all traditions as paths toward the transformation of human consciousness. For this is what my life's work has been about. My great hope for today is seeing people who have moved deeply into their hearts and souls through their individual and communal practices as the spiritual support for all the acts of justice and compassion now filling our streets, our communities, our nation, and the world, in the great hope that we will not go back to normal, but will together create a new reality, a world that is just and equitable for all, and in harmony and reciprocity with the natural world and all creation. Now, if we'd all been together at the Jewish Community Center for this ceremony, I had planned to start with something that hopefully would have elicited a good laugh, but actually is also true, and that is that I'm receiving an honor that I have been working toward my whole life, but never thought I'd be recognized for, an award for doing absolutely nothing. For this is what contemplation, meditation, prayer, whatever you call them in your own spiritual tradition, ultimately are. Practices of non-doing, of just being. But they are also non-doing in the sense of doing that the consensual reality holds so dear. Because according to all the worldly standards, spiritual practices are completely non-productive for whatever system of economics we engage in. They subvert the status quo that would keep many people oppressed so that a few might prosper extravagantly. And our religious and psycho-spiritual practices do this by subverting our seemingly natural, incessant ego activity, which keeps us distracted from the deeper reality of love and keeps us running on a hamster wheel that blocks our true divine nature. All our contemplative practices might do, and this has always threatened the powers that be throughout human history, is to transform the human heart, to mature the human soul, that we might be open to the divine love of which we are each individual expressions and which is the source of all creation, unleashing our own unique passions, energies, and aliveness, allowing us to live out the dictum from every tradition and transformational process that I know of, and that is to be compassionate as the beloved is compassionate. So I represent the millions of people from all faith traditions and from no tradition at all, who are practicing for the benefit of all sentient beings and for the entire earth herself. And on behalf of all those millions of unnamed names, including those who are hosting and watching this right now, I gratefully accept this honor. Thank you.
Sheikh Horsed Noah is being awarded the Interfaith Multicultural Award. Sheikh Horsed Noah is the executive director of the Abu Bakr Hasidic Islamic Center. He is also the outreach director of the Somali Islamic Center in Ohio. Iman Horsed is one of the leading voices in the Somali community in Columbus, Ohio. Horsed's work focuses on youth, social activism, justice, spirituality, and cooperation between faith leaders. He was recently featured in Faith in Public Life's National Network News magazine, which recognized him for his outstanding effort for interfaith unity. He has advanced his efforts through Faith in Public Life in Ohio and other faith forums. Iman Horsed's vision is to reclaim the teaching of Islam from ISIS and their likes, as well as those who spread Islamophobia. Hence, he closely works with the local churches, synagogues, temples, and peoples of other traditions. He is known for his very successful program, Meet a Muslim, where his mosque brings together faith leaders and congregations to promote understanding and cooperation. Horsed has inspired thousands to stand up for justice and work for a better world in healthcare, care for the poor, racial and economic justice, and whenever people have been unjustly treated and maligned.
Hi, this is Imam Horsed Noah. I would like to thank Network Spirituality for this beautiful award. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. As a Muslim, what I would like to say is it is our Islamic tradition to promote the work of interfaith, to teach the people the concept of loving your neighbor, to spread the peace. The first public speech Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, made when he came to Medina and he was addressing a pluralistic society, a multi-religious, multicultural society, was he said, أيها الناس, O people, أفشوا السلام وتطعموا الطعام, spread the peace and feed the hungry. So it is our Islamic belief that we not only promote the concept of loving your neighbor, the concept of spreading the peace, but also to lend a loving hand to the needy. This is our Islamic tradition, and it's also a major pillar of all of the Abrahamic traditions. This is the message of Jesus. This is the message Moses brought, and this is the message of Muhammad, peace be upon all of them, brought. I just came back from Ethiopia, where we were really doing this amazing work, the work of interfaith, where we're teaching the people how to love your neighbor, how to coexist beautifully. Here in our country, in America, of course, we are a pluralistic society. We need to learn from each other. We need to educate each other. That's how we can all coexist, and that's how we can revive the prophetic traditions. That's how we can revive the Abrahamic traditions. Thank you so much, and may God bless you all.
I'm honored to introduce Dr. Johannes Christian, the recipient of the Alvin Hadley Social Justice Award. Unfortunately, Dr. Christian was unable to be with us to be videotaped and share his thoughts with us. But I want to read his bio and just share some thoughts. Dr. Johannes Christian was the founding pastor of the Adoration and Peace Baptist Church in Columbus, Ohio. Dr. Christian, now pastor emeritus of Adoration and Peace Baptist Church and CEO of Face of Forgiveness, LLC. The Face of Forgiveness derived from the ministry of the Adoration and Peace Baptist Church, anti-bullying and nonviolent ministry. Dr. Johannes Christian was severely injured in a rock-throwing incident by a troubled youth, has developed a tenacity and passion to nullify bullying behaviors in our communities with the emphasis focused on the youth. Through Dr. Christian's personal conviction to forgive, the anti-bullying program has gained much momentum and forgiveness in its central focus. The Face of Forgiveness has been engaged in a collaborative effort with prevention specialists of area mental health agencies affiliated with the Franklin County Adam H. Board. Its mission is to improve the quality of people's lives through their anti-bullying seminars. The Face of Forgiveness Bullying Prevention Walkathon and Rally was first held on September 11th, 2011, and has helped us to raise awareness, support, and funding for its mission. They believe that all children should be safe and treated with dignity and respect. This goal is achievable with the elimination of bullying and violent acts. We are happy to present this award to Dr. Johannes Christian. Nearly 20 years ago, when Danius was an intern with Gail Gray with the City of Columbus, she was awakened to a life of the importance of learning while in the field, volunteering, and equality for all. After interning and graduating, Danius was off to the corporate world where she was very successful, designing clothes and serving as a purchaser and supervising staff. It did not take long before she realized that that position that she was holding was not exactly what she had intended to do with her life. After much planning and thinking and reaching out, praying and more praying, Danius founded Ignite Our City with the help of key friends and the support of her husband. This millennial took to social media to spread the word of our Lord, reached the hard to reach, and without consideration jumped on a rolling bandwagon. At the first event, the room was full of people of all ages and backgrounds, and they shared a common goal, and that was to serve our Lord Jesus Christ. When asked how she was able to get so many people in the room, Danius, with a smile, replied, she only knew a core group and the others just wanted to come together with people of the like. Danius has worked with companies to address the opioid crisis, assist with employment, and serve as a connector for all of those in need. Recently, Danius and her team opened a place in Dayton called the City Coffee House. Quality coffee for connections and positive change. It is bringing people together and building communities. It is a place where genuine love is poured out with the intention of serving others. Giving back is no longer a choice, but a way of life. It is my honor to present to Danius and Ignite the City the award Hope for Tomorrow.
Hello everybody, my name is Danius Williams, and I have the awesome opportunity of being a part of Ignite Our City. Ignite Our City is a nonprofit in the Columbus, Ohio area who serves specifically community members to help ignite, inspire, and create meaningful impact. Today I get to be with you in honor of this amazing award, Hope for Tomorrow, and I do not take that lightly. I really recognize the importance of people my age and even younger adults, young students to take a part of this community and what it means to be change agents. It really relies on us being actively involved in what is taking place and what is unfolding, and being willing to walk into a space rather than just sit on the sidelines. And so I get the privilege of being a part of that community of amazing individuals who are leaders. And so in regards to Hope for Tomorrow and the Spirituality Network and what it is that we get to do here in our city, it's beyond just providing services. It is beyond just providing action. It is really getting to the heart matter of what people need to create change. And I truly believe that it's faith. You can have all the knowledge, all the grit, all the power, but if you don't have faith, it often lands without real impact. And so for us, that's a really important component of creating change. Again, we are super honored to receive this award. We don't take it lightly. We really want to create an everlasting impact for generations to come, and we believe that it takes all of us, all the amazing organizations and resources in Columbus coming together to support one another, to leverage one another's knowledge, resources, and partnerships to create real everlasting change. Thank you again.
On behalf of the Living Faith Award Committee, I would like to thank you for your continued support of this event. And I would also like to personally congratulate our awardees for this year's event. In August of last year, when the committee sat down to start to plan, we had no idea that we would be in the situation that we are in now. But we have come through. We have persevered, and we have been able to present to you what we believe is a beautiful, beautiful event. And so I thank you again. And all through this time, even when in our planning, I always reminded our committee that even in the midst of chaos, God does exist. And this is a good example of the will and the way of God. So thank you. Until next year. Bye.
We're so delighted that you've been able to join us for the viewing of the 29th Living Faith Awards virtual event. This is not the event that we had planned for, but we have decided that it was important that each of the awardees be acknowledged during this time. I hope that you have enjoyed hearing from each of our awardees for the Living Faith Award and the 4 special categories. We have certainly enjoyed participating and doing it a little differently this year. I also want to thank Liz Kuhn, who has been our videographer and who has been with us throughout this process to make this virtual event possible. In times like these, we need to remember a few things: hope, forgiveness, being kind, and wear your mask when you go out and you are among people. As a good friend of mine would say, continue to be gentle with yourselves and to love one another. Thank you for attending.